So welcome to this episode of Strange Process. Today we're lucky to have Tom Wilson with us. Tom is a multidisciplinary artist, musician, writer, visual artist, and probably some other things that I don't even know about. Welcome, Tom.
Good
Thanks
to see you.
for coming in.
Yeah.
You were just telling me before we started, when talking about creative process, that you've been doing some lecturing in universities on creative process.
You know, I've been talking about the creative process and economics, and I've been doing it for years, actually. People often look at me like, I slept in my car last night, is how they look at me, and what could this guy possibly teach me? But the trick to be able to free yourself, to be able to make choices that serve your creative energy rather than serve your mortgage payment or serve getting groceries. If you get those things out of the way, you're able to free yourself to be in a position to do exactly what you want to do whenever you want to do it. And the job of becoming an artist is really a selfish one in the way that you want to be able to do whatever you want to do when you want to do it.
Right. So removing those constraints, those sort of day-to-day constraints from your
You got to get rid of that, and within that comes a self, let's call it inflicted discipline to be able to create. Because people ask the question all the time, "How did you do that?"
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so interesting. When I wrote my book, I was so insulted because people said, "Did you actually write it, or did someone?" I was like, "I'm too old to punch you in the throat." But and after I said, "Yes, of course I wrote it, you idiot," they said, the next question would be, "How did you do that?" And people don't realize that the creativity and the discipline, it's just hard work. It's like everything else that you dedicate your life to. It's hard work. It's sitting down and actually doing it. And the creative process is something that you have to discipline in a way, the same way. If you asked me to go and run 5 miles or around the Bay race, I'd laugh at you. But if you gave me 6 months to a year to be able to work myself up, to be able to run 5 miles, I just might be able to do it. That process is the familiarity, the muscle memory of sitting down and creating, and being in that discipline means that if you do it enough, you'll be able to do it at any time, to some degree.
So let me ask you, I'm assuming this is the first book you've ever written.
Yes.
Yes. You've written songs, I'm sure you've written other things in the past, but were there lessons you learned from the disciplines that you used to write songs or to make paintings that you applied specifically to writing this book, other than hard work? Was there some...
The book informed me that it was relearning to lead with your heart and not with your mind. If we were to split the two up, we'd say that the mind is really the technical side of things. And the technician in all of us is an important role. I'm not a very good technician, but I am fairly honest in my art, more so now because of the book. So I did sit down to write the same way I sat down to write songs for the last 45 years. And when you're writing 130,000 words, the book got edited down to 70,000 words. It's a daunting task. When Random House called me to write a book, they said, we heard you on CBC Radio. Have you ever thought about writing a book? I said, fuck no. Sounds like way too much work. And as it turns out, it was more of a luxury. And I'm going to tell you, the luxury was I've been trying to write things that resonate with people, that communicate with people, basically in 3 verses and a chorus. And to be able to have 130,000 words or 70,000 words to be able to tell a story. It's like going from driving a smart car to driving like a Lincoln Navigator and having an open road. All of a sudden, you have all this space to be able to create. And I would like to think that I used that up pretty well, and I would like to think that I adapted to the idea of writing a book. It was fairly fluid. I poured myself into that role the same way I do, and when I paint or write songs.
So there's some sort of economy that you have to employ when you're writing a song. Like, your song can't be 120 minutes long. I mean, it could be. It would probably,
No one's going to listen
probably
to
be
it.
a Yes album at that point. But
I know. I need a cape.
no,
I definitely need a cape.
So yeah, but so that's discipline, trying to get a song down to its bare bones, so that it's.
Oh yeah, and I mean the masters of it. I mean, I remember touring with Merle Haggard, who's passed away, but was definitely an unbelievable communicator, because all his songs were 2.5, 3 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
There was really nothing over that.
Mm-hmm.
And in those songs, he told complete stories of Americana stories, working man stories, and those things did in fact resonate with millions and millions of people and made him who he is. I mean, and when we listen to songwriters in general, you know, who are able to tell us stories in 3 verses and a chorus, and it's not an easy thing to do. We can all write songs, we can all write books, we can all paint, you know, but knocking it out of the park that way is a real gift, and it's something that I never say that I'm an artist. I always say that I'm working to be an artist, and it's a lifetime job. It's not something that you ever clock out of.
You talk about communication a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So is being an artist about being a
It
communicator?
is totally being a communicator. It's communicating with a part of yourself. When I started writing this book, I sat down with a lot of anger. The book is about me finding out 7 years ago that I was adopted. The book is about identity, the lack of identity, how that affects people. It affected me for 53 years, finding out that I wasn't a big, puffy, sweaty Irish guy like I thought I was. I'm actually a big, puffy, sweaty Mohawk man. But that anger that I had was for Bunny and George Wilson, the people, my great aunt and uncle who adopted me and raised me, and the people who didn't tell me the story. And as I started to write the book, all that blackness in my heart started to lift. And I started to feel a love for Bunny and George Wilson that I hadn't felt since I was in preschool. It was the same love that we all have for our parents or the people who nurture us that we kind of forget about. You know, we forget about that after life gets going, but being able to connect with that again, it's one of the greatest gifts. So that communication with this part of me managed to be able to tell a story that resonated. I mean, the book, I say respectfully, became a bestseller and still is a bestseller. And I think it was because I told a story with honesty, and I was able to basically stir up the sludge at the bottom of my lake and free myself up to be able to speak with love rather than anger.
And it was the career that you chose, and all of the work that you did on your other mediums, your painting and your songwriting, that allowed you to have the skills and the ability to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was part of the process. Let's say that. I also have to say I had a fantastic editor, and I'm sitting down now. I've sat down to start the second book for Random House, which is going to be called Blood Memory, and you know, it's I'm finding my way to it. How's that?
Did you ever think you'd end up being a writer?
With no ego involved in this answer, yes.
You thought you always wanted to write?
Yeah, I just, you know, I always joke, you know, that I started writing because people offered me a lot of money. But all you need is really, you know, sometimes the spirit, the creative spirit, the Lord of creativity doesn't come and pat you on the shoulder or pat you on the head. Sometimes it has to come along and kick you in the ass, you know. And this situation kicked me in the ass. And my joke was the only writing I did after I did my deal with Random House, the only writing I did was signing my name on the advance check. After I got beyond that, I was able to really dig deep.
Interesting. So in terms of, you got into painting later in your career too, did you? Or
Yeah, I've
you
been painting
always
I always, I started painting in 1997.
So you had a long musical career before that.
I had a long musical career before that, yeah, but in 1997 I quit drinking for the second time, and I needed to do something that was productive rather than destructive with my time. And I was writing an album, the last Junk House album at that time, and I kept a pretty steady work ethic, getting up in the morning and working on songs and quitting around, the time the kids came home from school, and that was usually the time that I'd start drinking, So I replaced the drinking with painting. I was unsuccessful in that attempt to stop drinking in 97. I did successfully quit, and 2 years later I've been clean and sober. It'll be 20 years in December coming. But I just decided to paint. My first wife said, we need some pictures up here. We don't have anything on the walls. And I didn't really notice because I was on the road so much. So I said, yeah, you're kind of right. You need something on your walls here too. Mm-hmm. But so I went to work painting, and I just started painting, filling up the canvases, really. And that's what this is about. I don't claim myself as a painter, but I love to paint. I don't tell people that I'm a musician, but I like to write songs and play them. And I'm not an author, but I write books. So having those titles, those are titles that go along with, mechanic or doctor or astronaut, or those are tags. Being an artist is a tag that you put on yourself and put a shingle out in front of out of your office and say that's what you are, and that's not what it is at all. That's what the world tells us being an artist is. And being an artist is actually not allowing the world to tell us anything ever again.
I guess the world only sees the song that comes out at the end. They don't see the process that leads up to that song or that painting.
No.
And it sounds like that's more of the importance of the final song lies in what it takes to create it, the process.
The hard work.
Yeah.
The hard work. I mean, that's not really for, nobody, I don't think that the masses or even a room full of people are that interested in it. People claim to be very interested in the creative process and songwriting. And as somebody who's trying to achieve working on being an artist, I'd have to say I'd much rather hear somebody tell me how to do the electrical work in my house, or my plumbing, or help me, build, an extension on my back deck. I'd like to figure that stuff out because I'm not very good at that. Okay, I'm not a very good handyman.
But you know a good deck when you see it.
I know a good deck. Yeah, I know how to sit on a deck. Let's just say that. But the idea of talking about songwriting is, really, you want to hear about that? I can't believe that people are interested in that. I am very passionate about talking about the creative process, which is why I accepted this gracious offer to come and be here today, because that's something that I like talking about that.
Well, and I like talking about it too, and I think it's interesting to talk to many different disciplines, many different artists about the process, to try and find threads of commonality about how they, first of all, why do they choose to do this in the first place?
Yeah.
And I take your point about communication. I think we all have this yearning to communicate something that can't be communicated with words or can be communicated in conventional ways.
It is so important. Not to throw it back to you, but the spaces that you create and what you create you're doing it to open people's minds, to put people in a place, hopefully, that inspire them. And that's what you're doing as an artist. It's the same thing I'm doing as an artist. The greatest thing that we can do as artists is open the door of possibilities to the next person and inspire another generation of people to do what we're trying to do, and hopefully do it better than we're doing it. That's our job as artists, and I think that's the communication. That's what's making it resonate for people. Is if somebody says, when my paintings are very simple. My songs are very simple. The way I write books are very simple. And if somebody says, I could do that, then my job's done. That's not a punch in the face to me. Mm-hmm. Because if somebody says that they can do that, that means that, well, you know what?
It's a compliment.
That's good. That's
they
good.
Because they think they can do it.
Well, yeah, that's the other part,
yeah.
you know. My first instinct is to say, well, let's see you try, you dimwit. But my second instinct, and the most important one, is that if people say that they can do that, what you're doing, then you're making this a bit of a better planet.
Exactly. I like that you talk about it as a job. Mm-hmm. I don't think most people think of art as a job. And I think that's reflected in probably the way that the arts are funded and the arts are supported or not supported. And it is a job. I consider it a job. I feel a responsibility as an architect when I design a building. It's probably going to be there for 50 or 100 years, and it's going to influence generations of people in some way. Mm-hmm. And do you feel the same about your work?
Well, I mean, I think that about my painting, I always
about
said,
any of your work.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't. I mean, you really have a physical presence in a city, in an environment that people are going to walk into and look at. I mean, what I create is on a take it or leave it basis, you know. So what I'm creating, I never consider disposable, but I also don't consider it to be at the front of people's consciousness all the time. If it was, then I would still be selling hundreds of thousands of records, wouldn't I?
But I mean, people can choose to use a building or not. If they find it reprehensible or they find it enlightening, they can choose a building too. It's just that a building has a longer lifespan. I mean, it takes longer to create and it lasts for longer.
Well, it's true, and I mean, it's why people go to Venice, or people go to Italy, or people go to New York City. I mean, that environment isn't, it's not meat and potatoes. I mean, we're talking about, we're not even talking about a single plate of serving of anything to become an artist. It has to be there's a lot of things that we pull out of the air. And architecture, by the way, and I'm not kissing your ass, but architecture has got a lot to do with what inspires people. I mean, the house that I live in has given birth to dozens of paintings and now hundreds of songs and a book, and I sit at my desk and I work. What does that house mean to me? Well, in 1981, when I was still playing punk rock, I was dating a girl across the street from where I live, and I used to sneak out of her basement at 4 a.m. I used to, in my slippy punk rock shoes, their Afghan used to chase me down the front lawn, and I used to run across the street and hide behind this old stone wall of the house that was across the street. In 1981, as a kid, I was 20 years old, I'd look at this house and I'd say, man, if I ever make any money, I'm going to buy this house.
And that's the house.
It's the house that I live in. So that environment, that architecture, whatever that little, I got the smallest house on the block, but it's the most important place for me to create. Mind you, I do write a lot on the road. I go to Nashville, and when we talk about, working up that creative muscle, it's so that I can go to Nashville and sit with Keb Mo or Colin Linden or Lucinda Williams and sit at a kitchen table and write a song, and I don't have to muster up, that energy or that confidence to be able to go toe to toe with other artists and create.
I'm sure the designer of that house would be appreciative of that sentiment that they've done something to contribute to what you do.
Oh, yeah.
So it's all a big continuum. I think we all influence each other. We all
exactly
communicate with each other.
It was my next line, is that no matter what our discipline is, we pull from each other. We're able to, that's our job.
Yeah, and you can't not communicate. You're going to
No.
communicate one way or the other. So if you can make it purposeful and you can understand what you're doing, it makes it all the more powerful.
It's so true.
Well, Tom, thanks so much for coming in.
Oh, what a
Really
pleasure.
appreciate
What a
it.
pleasure. Thanks.
Yeah.
I love it when people give me a chance just to talk and talk and talk.
Well, thanks, Tom. We've been talking to Tom Wilson on this episode of Strange Process. Please join us next time, and we'll see you then.